Okay, thank you for that. And tied to climate change, we've all been hearing about carbon credits. Next presenter will help to demystify that a little bit. We have Brian Kleinhenz from Juneau, works for Terra Verde there. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more, Brian, and are you ready to take over the presentation?
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I'll give it a try here. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. Brian Kleinhenz from Juneau. I'm a consulting forester. I am upset I'm not in Sitka today. Goodness, what a beautiful day to be in Sitka. So I wish I was there with those of you who managed to make it to the room. And glad to see there's such a crowd here on the remote as well. And I will try to keep this interesting. I know it's a little bit of a challenge to watch the screen all morning, and I'll welcome any questions. I'm gonna recycle a presentation I've given a couple times already about carbon markets and how Alaska fits into this new global trend of organizations looking to buy carbon offsets to mitigate and manage their risk to an impact on our climate. So let me see if I can get this presentation working first. And if you guys can give me some feedback in the room, and if you can see what's going on, I'd really appreciate it.
I haven't seen it yet, but we'll get there.
Okay.
Okay, we see the PowerPoint not in presenter mode yet.
How's that?
Yeah, it looks good.
Yep, that's good.
Perfect. Okay, hey, so I'm going to keep this really narrowly focused on Alaska, but I am going to contextualize how Alaska and Alaska's participation in the carbon markets fits into the global carbon market. And one thing I'll say about this is when I first started getting involved with carbon credits back in 2006, I was, from a forester's perspective, I was really worried about and interested in the basic biometric methods, forest measurements, silvicultural assumptions, meat and potatoes forestry issues and how they impacted participation in carbon markets. Now, I'm really interested in that still, but what I've learned is that most of the buyers in the carbon market, they don't need that level of granularity on what's going on with individual carbon projects, and they don't want it. And in fact, the carbon market is huge in scope and scale, and the kind of carbon offsets that are being created. And what I did here is I just pulled some big headlines off the internet, right? So this is just showing the size of the market of folks and organizations that are interested in mitigating their climate impact. And you have large, billion-dollar companies that are now voluntarily investing in climate neutrality and in offsetting carbon emissions. What was a very niche market 6-7 years ago is now several $billion in traded carbon credits. This is seriously big business. And Alaska is a kind of a niche player. I mean, we do generate tens of millions of tons of carbon credits in Alaska. It seems like a lot, but on a global scale, it's really not. I'll show you guys a little bit more later, but this market doesn't seem to be slowing down. It doesn't seem to be going away, but it is constantly changing. And one of the ways that it's changing is that these markets, all of them, continue to face scrutiny, and particularly in the light of public opinion, but also investigative journalism. And this is natural and warranted. We've seen a lot of recent press investigation into big projects in South America and Africa, particularly natural resource-based, forest-based projects, where, as it turns out, the project developers weren't really sure who owned the land. So massive amounts of credits that benefits were being claimed and they weren't being made in actuality. And so what we're seeing is that these markets are differentiating, and buyers are savvy to good credits and bad credits. They're savvy to forestry credits versus gas emission credits or methane capture credits. And I will say one big benefit that Alaska has in forest carbon markets is that we have a high degree of certainty of the land ownership, which, as I said, isn't really all that common on a global scale. But predominantly Alaska Native corporations that are participating right now have a very easy time demonstrating that they actually have title to the land. Most of that information, of course, is on BLM's website here in Alaska. You can download an ownership map yourself and see that that's true. It's also interesting. I've done an investigation and looking at how these forest offset methodologies are applied in other parts of the world, in other protocols or markets. And the biggest non-North American market's one called Vera. And actually these big African and South American projects are typically under that Vera system. But people don't really go to the woods. It's more about talking to communities, doing engagement, kind of basically record keeping, filling out paperwork. These North American projects and the way they come together, both in the surety of the land ownership and the fact that we actually go to the woods and paint trees. I mean, when I send crews to the woods to install carbon plots, they pound a piece of rebar into the dirt and paint numbers on trees. It's very well documented, even in the field. And that accountability to the actual trees themselves and the accountability to landowners makes it possible for Alaska to have maintained high market pricing, even as this scrutiny has continued to happen over the past 2 years. I threw this in. I think this group's been exposed to forest carbon offsets and what they are many times before, so I'm not going to go into detail. But a willing buyer and a willing seller are basically promising to keep some trees standing, or to promise to grow trees a little faster than they might have otherwise, and then that climate benefit gets quantified and purchased. There's two main market spheres that exist right now in Alaska and in North America in general. And there's the big blue circle, because it's the bigger market, is the compliance market. And you've heard this referred to as the California compliance market, or the CARB market. And this is the state of California told carbon emitters in California, so think big refineries, told the refineries and the energy producers, hey, you guys have to balance off the emissions out of the stack, and you're going to have to do that through a combination of technological improvements, and if you need to go out and buy some offsets, you can do that too. And so many of the projects that have been developed in Alaska were developed specifically for this California compliance market. Some of the biggest projects, Sea Alaska, Ahtna, Chugach, these were all done under the California Compliance Protocol. Now, what's been going on with the California market is that it's actually, not surprisingly, a pretty political market. And the California legislature has steered the market towards projects that are based in California, forest projects that are based in California. And there's been a pretty big price differentiation. There's actually almost a $10 spread now between the same kind of forest credit in California versus the same kind of carbon credit anywhere else. So Alaska is part of everywhere else. We've seen that as that market strength eroded, Alaska landowners have started to take advantage of voluntary markets. And this is any willing buyer, any willing seller. A couple of standard protocols have been developed, but the main difference is that there is no legal obligation for the buyers to participate. It's part of their corporate sustainability goals or marketing goals that they're trying to offset their carbon emissions. It's really interesting. I mean, just to point this out, if any of you use Google on a regular basis or use the splash page on Google, it doesn't say much. It's Google and then there's a search bar, but at the bottom, they make a statement about carbon neutrality. It's basically the only sentence on the whole page. But tech companies in particular, but increasingly transportation companies like airlines, this is a big part of how they do their marketing and how they differentiate themselves to their customers. And they believe the customers really care about this because they are spending real dollars to make it happen. Even big energy companies, extraction companies, really have very lofty goals around carbon neutrality. So this orange circle here, right now in Alaska, there's only a handful of voluntary carbon markets or projects, I'm sorry, but this is continuing to grow. This is favorable for the landowners because the term is much shorter. It's a 40-year term instead of a 100-plus-year term. And it's just overall an easier, paperwork-wise, an easier process to deal with. The prices have been strong. So the prices on the voluntary market are not quite as high as the compliance market, but they're so close that the level of commitment associated with the voluntary market makes it much more attractive. It's that combination. You're only getting a few dollars premium. When the first compliance projects went into Alaska, you were looking at almost $15 spread between voluntary and compliance pricing. Now that's down to just a few dollars. So I said that there's all kinds of carbon credits. So it used to be, at least aspirationally, when this idea of carbon offsets was created, it was meant to be tokenized, like Bitcoin or even currency like dollars or yen, where one credit was one credit, and it was sort of had the same monetary value. Very quickly, the market started to differentiate and pay more for specific kinds of credits. So there's basically these two big themes of credits: avoidance credits and removal credits. So removal credits are really easy to understand. If you had a machine, a little that looked like an air conditioner, right? And it sat there and you plugged it in and it whirred and the fan went and it spit carbon pucks out the back end as it filtered air, that would be removal credits. And in fact, if people are working on those kinds of machines, the market's super interested in that. They love that idea. If the problem is that, of course, you burn more electricity filtering the air than and it has more of a climate detriment than the carbon you're capturing, but they're working on the efficiencies. Now, trees growing Perfect, right? That's actually an all natural solar powered way to capture CO2 out of the atmosphere and stack it up in a column, which is a tree. And so those removal credits from trees growing, particularly afforestation and reforestation project, a new tree that wasn't there yesterday, has a real high market value right now. Buyers in the market feel good about that. They like it. It's easy to understand. There's a tree there. There wasn't one yesterday. As long as the tree continues to survive, they're getting benefit, and the carbon credits are both easier to understand and have a higher degree of confidence that they're real. Avoidance credits, on the other hand, are in nature-based context, conservation credits. So these are the credits where you're promising not to cut down a tree. And it works more it works more like an easement or moving it into a different market. So this is the same tree that the traditional timber products market's competing for, that now you have the carbon markets looking at and saying, okay, well, we're going to pay the landowner some amount of money to keep it standing. And what's been really interesting in Alaska over the past 2 years is that we've been able to observe carbon markets moving the traditional wood products market. We're seeing displacement. See, Alaska had a big press release when they shut down their timber export program that they were actively moving into carbon markets. That kind of big impact on the traditional wood products market is way more observable in Alaska than it is anywhere else in the lower 48. Carbon continues to still be a part of the economic ecosystem, still a market driver, but we're actually seeing competition between those two markets in Alaska. From the perspective of the buyer, this whole chart you're seeing in front of you, you could see that there's all kinds of technology-based and nature-based. Some of these, like over on the left-hand side, this landfill gas and industrial pollutants, the market's not real. The voluntary market doesn't think these are very interesting. I mean, they don't have a lot of cachet. They don't have a lot of shine to them. You're not getting many co-benefits. You're basically putting a meter on top of a landfill and capturing the gas and siphoning it off into a tank. And so a credit generated in that fashion is only currently selling for $1 or $2 a ton, whereas a high quality forest carbon offset, like the ones we're generating in California, can sell for, or like the ones we're generating in Alaska, are selling for nearly $15 a ton. It's a big spread. Even though I said that, big spread in pricing, I wanted to offer this to contextualize how big of a piece forestry really plays. So if you could see the green bar, there's kind of a lime green bar, and I have no idea how the colors look for you guys, but the one that says red plus, those are basically natural resource credits. That's Vera, the big international broker or registry for natural resource based credits. But you see how those green bars are not usually the biggest part of the bar chart. And these other kinds of credits are actually trading at much, much higher volumes. So there's way more going on with mine methane capture, with energy efficiency, that transportation bar chart, that pink one, that there's a whole protocol where companies that run big fleets of vehicles simply upgrade their fleet of vehicles to more efficient vehicles, and then they get to take credit for that. There's massive amount of credits being traded in all these other protocols. I mean, and every time I go to one of these meetings on carbon, I'm just astounded by what people are doing. I tell these stories to my teenage son, and his favorite one is that I ran into these two guys from New Zealand, and they had developed a vaccine that they could inject into cattle and it made the cattle less gassy. So cow methane emissions are a big source of methane, which is a top tier greenhouse gas. And so they were trying to sell carbon credits basically to give cows shots to stop them from farting. And I don't know, maybe they're millionaires now, but that kind of creative thinking is exactly what's going on in the carbon market. There is not a sector out there that hasn't at least evaluated how this could impact their company. Now, as foresters, we're lucky because trees do this automatically, but you can see by these volumes being traded here that forestry is just part of the story. This is the California marketplace, and California is different. California is very forest heavy, the California compliance market. And there's an acronym I need to explain. DEBS is shorthand for direct environmental benefit. So and this is from the perspective of a California lawmaker. Do these credits come from the state of California? If yes, then they are blue. If no, then they are that teal color. So you can see that when Alaska was issuing lots of credits in 2001, 2000, or 2020, 21, 22, we actually are a big part of that teal bar. But over time, markets have started to shift. The California carbon market has started to shift towards forestry projects in California. We're seeing a lot of landowners that were reluctant to enter the carbon market in California start to do projects now. So there's a shift going on. Alaska's, the new projects that are new are starting to move to the voluntary market. This is pricing. This is a little old, but I talked about a couple of these protocols. Biogas is changing, converting to a biodiesel. IFM, that's forestry. That's improved forest management. So you see that it's among the highest priced carbon credits currently trading on the market. And other credits that, renewable energy, energy efficiency, Red Plus is non-North American based forestry projects. You can see that's really interesting number there. They're trading at half the price. So there's a big spread in the kind of credits. Forestry still commands a high premium. I think we ought to be proud of that. And then there are various registries. So these are kind of the rule books. Each of these organizations has their own rule book for how carbon credits come together. And the couple of common ones used in Alaska are the first two, ACR with this American Carbon Registry, and CAR, the Climate Action Reserve. So, and this is the percentage of global credits that are being traded by registry. And so there's only one Alaska carbon project I'm aware of that's part of VCS. Everything else that's been done in Alaska to date is part of those two lower bars. You could just get that's just again, we're kind of a small player. We're doing big things for the size of the state, but globally there's way more going on in other kinds of protocols and other kinds of forest types. I know I'm running a little short here, so I think you guys have kind of been through. I had some credits here on how projects come together, a picture on messy plot that we put in not too far from Petersburg. But there has been, just at a high level, the bottom there, the size of the projects. I mean, we've had tens of millions of carbon credits already generated in Alaska. It's a major economic impact. It's a big new industry for us in wood products. It's a way for landowners to monetize the asset in a different way than we've ever experienced before, and much more open and frankly lucrative than conservation easements, which were really the only other option to a landowner pre-carbon credits. This is, I'll end with this, I think. This was a series of questions that actually came out of the Alaska legislature, the Senate Natural Resource Committee, as they were evaluating the two carbon bills that Alaska has been considering. One of them is law now. So Alaska, the state of Alaska actually has the ability to participate in carbon markets, voluntary carbon markets through that bill. The Alaska Native corporations and two land trusts, the university and the mental health trust, also have the ability to participate in the voluntary carbon market. Now, the state of Alaska, to my knowledge, is still evaluating whether or not it makes sense to put together a forest carbon project. But these were real questions that came from public comments and from the Senate Natural Resources Committee. I really liked them because they did summarize some of these fundamental public perceptions, particularly, the first couple. Like, hey, can I still go to fish and hunt and recreate on these lands? Is this going to lock up public lands? The answer to that is no. It hasn't. You're limited in how and when you can cut the trees down, but in terms of co-benefits for subsistence and recreation and hunting and fishing, this has been a highly compatible market. The question about at the lower two there, the greenwashing one has been really interesting and points to just the pervasiveness of the ineffectiveness of the investigative reporting that's gone on around this, and whether or not we're doing a good job on actually creating climate benefit. And I think there's pretty broad agreement that there's still plenty of room to improve with how these credits get generated, how the money gets leveraged to actually improve the quality of our air, actually improve the quality of our climate and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, or even, can we go as far as to hold the line or reverse the level of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere? And I just talked a lot and I didn't get through my slides, but I'd rather have a conversation. So I'm going to stop there and see if anybody's got any questions. And I really do thank you for letting me present today.
I don't see anything online.
Oh, okay. Sure to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, this is Kellen. Too bad you're not here. But I guess my question is, how much more opportunity is there to be, I don't know, quantifying or selling carbon credits in Alaska, or maybe more specifically Southeast Alaska? Are all the landowners that have joined the market already joined the market, or is there more to go?
Did you hear the question?
I think I did. So it was the question was, how much more opportunity is there in Southeast Alaska for landowners to participate? Well, there's 12 just large private landowners. Sea Alaska has not enrolled all their lands in carbon offset projects. They still have lands that are side. And then of the 12 village corporations, I think there's 5 that haven't yet participated. And I think there's only one village corp that did enroll all their lands. So there's still room. And then there's the 2 land trusts in the state of Alaska that haven't taken a direct approach yet, that may choose to do so. So there's still plenty of room. It's getting harder. I'll say that the rule books keep changing. They keep getting stricter. Typically when these protocols and these rule books change, it means less carbon per acre that goes to market for the landowner. That's the trend. That's real. They, I think they're aware of it. So, there definitely was a benefit to getting in early. Prices are higher now, but yields per acre were better early on. And then statewide, there's lots of room still. I mean, there's still lots of land in the interior, south central, plenty of Alaska Native corporations that are still waiting to see how the market continues to grow and evolve.
That's great context, thanks.
Thank you. Chris, I see a question.
Yeah, I just have a really kind of a quick question and a follow-up. I'm wondering what happens if the trees are lost to disturbance, and then I don't know why, kind of a guttural response. I think I've always kept my head down on these carbon markets and haven't paid too much attention or devoted myself to really learning about them. Just wondering what kind of is there just a ballpark average payment per acre that you could throw a figure at?
I'll do the second one first because it's easy. No. I mean, it's the same as if you asked it as a straight up forestry question. The only way to, it depends on how big the trees are on the acre. And so, you'd have to do something in forestry. We have got this concept of soil exploitation value, kind of what's the intrinsic, value of the land without the trees. You'd have to do something like that for carbon. Nobody's ever bothered. So there isn't really a standard, but the more volume, the more standing volume you've got, the more credit you can sell per acre. And let's see,
What about-
your first question was, sorry,
If the trees are lost to disturbance, what happens? How's
Oh,
that-
okay, yeah, basically there's a mandatory insurance policy you buy into. The protocols call it a buffer pool. But you set aside 20% of the credits you generate into an account. Every project proponent, every project developer does this. And then it works like any other insurance pool. If you have a fire or bugs kill, anything natural happens that causes the trees to die or fall down, then you draw out of the insurance pool. If you just have a rampant logger that you didn't control and they cut down the trees, then you don't get to use the insurance pool. You're liable for that. But if Mother Nature does it to you, then you get to draw on that pool.
Thank you
Great,
very
thanks.
much. I think that we are running short of time.